the idea of pausing at a beginning is so powerful because it can become an embodied experience instead of just a mental one. And it gives us the time and the ability to reflect before we plant those seeds of intention and move forward. We need to reflect on what's working, on what we truly want, of what our values are, what we desire before we can move towards those desires. And if we don't slow down enough, we'll create the vision board, we'll set the goals, we'll go after it, but we won't actually really know if those are things that we desire or that society has told us we should desire. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast, your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm here today with a solo episode. It feels like it's been a hot minute since I've recorded one of these, as I took a bit of a breather over the holiday season and had a few back-to-back guest episodes air because I already had them recorded, so it was really easy to just go in and edit. And then last week was our throwback episode back to our first year as a podcast when I had a co-host, Ellie McMillan, and we were talking about how the beginning of January does not feel like a new beginning, like a fresh start. And that theme is going to come through in what I'm talking about today. I have so much I want to talk about. My alarm went off this morning and I drifted back into that kind of half dream, half awake state. And when I came out of that place, I realized that I had been recording a podcast episode in my head. Unfortunately, it disappeared really quickly from my memory, the way that dreams often do, because I think it was really good. However, I have a little bit of an outline today. I want to make sure that I stay on track, I guess. I often come into these episodes with just a very general sense of what I want to speak to. And while I do think that that can be really valuable and supportive, I also want to make sure that I touch on all of the points that have been circling for me about this idea of beginnings, and particularly this moment of beginning. Speaking of beginnings, before I go any further, I do want to make sure I remember to invite you to join me for my Sacred Start workshop. This is a workshop that I have run for the past 2 years, so this will be my third time running the workshop, but this year it's getting a bit of an upgrade, and it's running on January 20th, live at noon Mountain Time. Of course, there will be a replay because I know that we don't all have the ability to drop into something live midweek. And I'm really excited about this workshop because it feels like it's standing at the threshold of what actually is a bit of a new beginning. Imbolc is coming up on February 1st. We'll be celebrating that in ceremony as well on Jan 29th if you desire to join. And Imbolc in the Celtic calendar is the beginning of the season of spring. Carmen Spaniola calls it winter spring in her book, The Spirited Kitchen, and I really love that term for it because where I'm recording from, it's still winter. However, the light has shifted. There is that lengthening of the days. It becomes almost palpable at that point of time. There's this sense of promise, of hope, of quickening beneath the soil. Depending on where you are, you might actually be getting close to when those spring flowers might start to come through. But January is not a beginning, despite what our modern day calendar would have us believe. There is a lot of pressure at this time of the year to, start strong, make those New Year's resolutions, new year, new you, all of this messaging, all of this pressure, all of this push to sell you the latest gym fad that's going to help you actually lose weight this year and stick to that gym habit, or new diets, new even mindfulness practices. Gabby Bernstein runs her big 21-day manifestation challenge beginning January 1st. And to me, it's all of this noise and all of this added pressure of you need to do more at a moment of the year where we are not meant to be doing much of anything. This is the last bit of quiet, the last bit of deep darkness, of rest, of winter. And on top of this urgency, this pressure that comes with capitalism and the way that our society operates these days, we also have a whole bunch more shit thrown at our nervous systems. The beginning of 2026 has been hard. We're just going to lay that there. Unless you have been an ostrich with your head in the sand and completely ignoring any news or social media outlets, you know that there's shit. It's happening. 2025 had a lot of it. We're starting 2026 out the same way. And so I think for me, this Sacred Start workshop really lands at a moment where so many of us need tenderness and support rather than rah, big new routine, go, right? There's this ongoing instability, ongoing grief, fatigue, disillusionment, and this building sense that the old way of doing things and of being in the world aren't working, but that the new ways either aren't fully formed, or we don't really know what they are, or we don't know how to access them. And so today I'm fully not just preaching Sacred Start right now. Just so you know, this is today's topic, right? The idea of beginnings. You have permission. I want to give you this permission to not feel optimistic right now, to not feel productive, to not feel ready, to be at a beginning, and to remember that beginnings in nature, they're not big and loud. The bloom, the flower bursting forth is not the beginning. The beginning is the root system dropping down into the dark. It's quiet, it's a bit disorienting, and it's very tender. A beginning is not a launch, it's a threshold. And as we step towards the threshold of Imbolc, to me, this feels like a really beautiful time to begin to think about how we want to begin. Not just our days, but our weeks, new chapters of our lives, our years. Where do we mark those beginnings? In the reality of cyclical time, every moment is a new beginning and an ending. And so that's where this workshop was born out of. I'll share a little more detail at the end, but it is very much kind of the woven topic of today. I want to talk a little bit about beginnings and the struggles I faced with creating practices that supported me to begin my days, my years, when I was working as a midwife. For me, midwifery was beautiful and exhausting. It was a career I deeply, deeply loved. I still do. I am so passionate about midwifery care. I believe every birthing person should have access to a midwife throughout their pregnancy. And it was a career that demanded so much from me, and it drove me to burnout, as many of you, or if not all of you, will know if you've been here listening to me for a while. But I remember very vividly when I had left my marriage and had my own home and my own space, and I was starting to build healthier habits and to think about what I really wanted for me in life, what would be healing and supportive and healthy and help me create a life that felt really good. One of the things I was really craving was, at that time, I would have called it routine. Now I would call it ritual. And the distinction is important, I believe. But I was really struggling because I would get in a good routine in the morning, coming downstairs at a good time, having time to sit and read or journal or meditate, eat a good healthy breakfast, go about my day. Except that every time I felt like I got into a good swing, I'd have a slew of births. I'd have a bunch of back-to-back births or work-related reasons, calls that prevented me from having that sense of ritual and routine. And part of the issue for me is that I had created this sense of like, it had to be that certain way. It had to start at 7 a.m. and end at 9 a.m. And, the details don't actually matter. I don't remember them really at this point, but it was rigid. And if I couldn't do the whole thing at the roughly same time in the morning, then I couldn't do it at all. And I was left with this feeling of some days I was set up really well, and some days I wasn't. And I kept trying to force myself back into this pattern, and it just didn't work. And so I think that this inability to control the scope of what my mornings looked like, even though I don't have children, I get the sense that this instability in time and what happens in the morning is mirroring, to some extent, the lived reality of many of my clients who do have children who, some mornings they sleep in and some mornings they're angels and some mornings they are tyrants, and you don't get to control all of that, right? So what really shifted for me was when I started to realize, and this was much later, but when I started to realize that I could create moments of beginning and moments of stillness and pause that could be woven into my days and my mornings specifically, no matter what the morning looked like. And that's part of the magic of ritual, is that we can ritualize any action or activity that we're doing. And it's micro shifts often that change, a routine that feels heavy or onerous or just like has to get done into something that can help enrich our lives and create a place to move into our day from that feels fully resourced. And it's powerful because the way we begin really does influence the way that we feel throughout the day. And even and as simple as this sounds, it's not easy because we are in a culture that, idealizes the clean slates, big goals, instant momentums, new year, new you. This whole approach, it bypasses our nervous systems and what our nervous systems need. It ignores our overwhelm. It ignores our exhaustion. It ignores our grief. It ignores our fear and treats humans like machines instead of the cyclical beings that we are. And our bodies, in order to create change, we think about new beginnings, and often it's a sense of a new start, like a change in a pattern, in a behavior, in our setting. But our bodies need safety before we can create change. The nervous system needs orientation and to be resourced before we can take action effectively. Sure, we can push ourselves through and then beat ourselves up and go into that, shame spiral when we feel like we're not disciplined enough to stick to the simple new routine we gave ourselves. So I'd like to invite you right now, as you think about this, as we talk about this idea of beginnings, and again, beginnings of day, of month, of year, of new chapter of life, whatever it is, thinking about this moment that we're in right now as you listen. And maybe you're listening to this on January 12th when it comes out, and maybe you're listening to this in 2 years in the middle of summer. Whenever it is, there are always beginnings. And so just taking a moment, if it's safe to do so, if you're not driving, maybe you close your eyes. If you are driving, that's okay. We're just going to bring attention to your breath for a minute. Place one hand on your body, again, if it's safe to do so, and just ask, what are you carrying with you into this beginning? And what would it feel like to not rush past this moment? Because that's another piece of what we do, right? We rush. I just learned the word or the term, it's a psychology term, experiential avoidance. And I love that I have this term now because it is the definition of something I've been speaking to for years. It's the reason why slowing down, not rushing past, being still feels shitty to a nervous system that is always on the go. And experiential avoidance is the body, the mind, it is our being's way of protecting us from all the grief, the fear, the realities, the hardships, everything that we have been suppressing, that we don't feel like we have capacity or time or energy to look at. If we keep busy, if our minds keep busy, our bodies keep busy, it's easy to ignore. And so the idea of pausing at a beginning is so powerful because it can become an embodied experience instead of just a mental one. And it gives us the time and the ability to reflect before we plant those seeds of intention and move forward. And any of you who've joined me for a Wheel of the Year ceremony will know how powerful this is, because this is something that we do 8 times a year at every turn of the wheel. Is we reflect and then we set intentions. We need to release what doesn't serve anymore. We need to reflect on what's working, on what we truly want, of what our values are, what we desire before we can move towards those desires. And if we don't slow down enough, you'll create the vision board, we'll set the goals, we'll go after it, but we won't actually really know if those are things that we desire or that society has told us we should desire. So thinking about beginnings, again, as an embodied experience, this isn't about mental decisions. This isn't about vision boards, though those can be really fun to make, but it's about sensations. It's about emotions. It's about energy. It's about returning to a rhythm of life that we used to know. One where marking the thresholds was important and honored. One where we listened to nature and her wisdom. One where we honored what is ending as much as celebrated what is beginning. And so if beginnings feel hard for you, if this beginning feels hard for you, know that you are not alone in that feeling, and that it makes all the sense in the world. I would love for you to come join me to mark this beginning, to create a ritual for yourself that fits into your actual life in all its chaos and beauty, the way that it is now, not some idealized version of what a morning or a beginning could look like for you, but what can you actually weave into your life to create more spaciousness, to create more presence, to infuse magic into the mundane. This is a guided, embodied threshold. It's a space to orient, to soften, and to listen. And it's a way to begin from truth and trust instead of from pressure. This is not a goal-setting workshop. It's not a productivity reset. It's not a morning routine workshop. It's not about becoming a better version of yourself. I posted recently that I have no interest in helping you become a better, quotation mark, version of you. the you that exists beneath all of the layers of conditioning, of societal pressure, of other people's beliefs, of all of the shit that gets piled on us through our lives. That version is already there, and she is the most beautiful, truest version of you. I desire to help you uncover her. One of my favorite parts of the workshop is leading the participants on a journey to meet an animal ally. And the reason it's one of my favorite parts is because it can be so powerful to have an ally to work with, whether it be for a season, for a chapter, for a full year. Again, reconnecting us to the wisdom of nature and the fact that we are ourselves part of nature, no matter how separate we may feel, no matter how separate our society has told us we are not. We are animals. So this is for women who are tired of forcing themselves forward, who sense that there's a wiser way to begin, even if you don't know what that looks like for you. And for those of you who want to move into this year feeling resourced instead of bracing. It's also beautiful timing because we are nearing the completion of the year of the snake. There's so much stuff on the internet right now being like, the year of the horse is here, gallop ahead, except it's not here yet. And it doesn't arrive until February 17th. And so we are in the last, maybe the word that wants to come through is cathartic, but like uncomfortable perhaps, and unsettling perhaps, few weeks of the shedding that the year of the snake brought us. So yes, we're in a 1 year, numerologically speaking already, but we are not yet in the year of the horse. So we don't need to rush here. The world doesn't need more rushed beginnings. We need more grounded, rooted, and honest ones. And you're allowed to take your time, whether or not you choose to join me for this workshop, whether or not this feels like a beginning for you. Maybe January 1st feels like a beginning, and we had some supportive astrology this year to help us begin some things near the beginning of Jan. But regardless, you are allowed to take your time. You are allowed to go gently. You are allowed to begin from where you actually are. So if you would like a place to be guided, witnessed, and held at this threshold, please check the link in my bio or head to my website, myluminouslife.ca/sacred-start. The homepage has a link on it, multiple, in fact. If you can't find it somehow, come to Instagram at @IamEileenMarch and send me a note. I'll send you the link directly. If you have questions, please reach out to me there or through email, eileen@myluminouslife.ca. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever the platform that you are viewing or listening to it on has. It helps ever so much for this podcast to be discovered so that we can continue to spread the message that you get to let yourself be right, that rested women will change the world. You don't need to leap into the future. You only need to arrive fully at the beginning and take a single step. I hope that you'll join me again this time next week. Bye for now.